$0. That's what's in the account. Not the checking account. Not the savings account you opened because the bank offered a free tote bag. The investment account. The one you created on a Sunday night 8 months ago. Funded with the intention of doing something with it soon. And have not opened since. You are 29 years old. The account has been sitting there for 8 months earning nothing. Growing nothing. Becoming nothing. You didn't forget about it. That's the thing. You knew it was there. You just kept not opening it for reasons that felt reasonable at the time. And feel different now. This is not a story about laziness. It is not a story about stupidity. Or carelessness. Or not caring about your future. It is a story about a window. The window opened at 22. And it is still technically open now. But windows that stay open long enough start to feel like walls. And somewhere between the first paycheck and this particular Sunday night, you stopped being someone who hadn't started yet. And started being someone who doesn't invest. You don't know exactly when that happened. It happened the way debt happens. Gradually. Then completely. The window opens, age 22. Your first real paycheck lands on a Thursday. After taxes. It is $1,790. You stare at it the way you stare at something you have been waiting for long enough. That the arrival feels slightly unreal. You transfer $400 to savings because that feels responsible. You pay your share of the rent. You buy groceries. You go out on Friday because it is the first Friday of your actual adult life. And that feels like something worth marking. Nobody pulls you aside that Thursday. Nobody sits down with you and says, the most valuable thing you can do with this paycheck is not save $400. It is invest $200. Not because $200 will change your life. Because the habit will. Because $200 at 22 in a total market index fund is not $200. It is the first brick of something that will build itself while you sleep for the next 40 years. Nobody says this. Your parents didn't invest that way. Your school didn't cover it. Your employer sent you a 401k enrollment form that looked like a legal document. And you put it in a drawer where it remained for 11 months. So nothing happened. Not from negligence. From absence. The information wasn't there. And in the absence of information, inertia won. Inertia always wins when there's no reason to move. You are 22. The window is open. You do not know the window exists. The excuses that weren't excuses, ages 22 to 25. At 23. You tell yourself you'll start investing when you have more money. This feels rational. The rent is real. The student loan payment is real. The margin is thin. What you don't know yet is that, when I have more money, is not a plan. It is a delay that compounds. Because the money you're waiting for will arrive. And when it does, the lifestyle will expand to meet it. And the margin will feel exactly as thin as it does now. And the reason to wait will simply update itself with new details. At 24. You look at a brokerage account sign-up page for 11 minutes. You get to the part that asks about your investment experience. And the options are beginner, intermediate, and experienced. And something about selecting beginner feels like an admission you're not ready to make. You close the tab. You tell yourself you'll research it more first. You do not research it more. You watch 3 videos about index funds over the following 4 months. And retain the feeling of having done something without having done anything. This is the most expensive substitution in personal finance. The feeling of progress replacing the act of progress. The video watched instead of the account opened. The article bookmarked instead of the transfer made. You are building a comprehensive understanding of a thing you are not doing. The understanding costs nothing. The not doing costs everything. At 25. Your salary increases to $58,000. The raise is $9,000. You feel it for approximately 6 weeks before the lifestyle absorbs it. The apartment gets slightly better. The groceries get slightly less calculated. The raise disappears into a higher baseline. And the margin stays thin. And the investing stays on the list. The list is long. The list is always long. The list has never once gotten shorter on its own. The decade passes, ages 25 to 30. At 26, a coworker named Priya mentions her Roth IRA at lunch. Not to lecture you. Casually. The way people mention things that are simply part of their life. She's been maxing it since she was 23. You nod. You say that's smart. You feel something uncomfortable move through you that you don't examine directly. You file it under things to look into. And look into nothing. At 27. The market drops 18% over 6 weeks. You read about it. You feel a version of relief that you don't have money in it. You don't examine this feeling either. The relief is real. But it is the wrong kind. The relief of someone who avoided a storm by never leaving the house. The storm passed. The people who stayed in the market recovered. Their accounts grew. Yours stayed at zero. You avoided the loss. You also avoided the recovery. You avoided everything. At 28. You go to a friend's birthday dinner. Someone at the table mentions they have $40,000 in their brokerage account. They are 28. Same age as you. Similar job. Similar salary. Similar city. You do the calculation silently under the table. You don't finish it because the number it's heading toward is one you're not ready to sit with in a restaurant. You change the subject. You go home. You open your investment account for the first time in 4 months. The balance is $0. You close it. At 29. You make $71,000 a year. You have $6,200 in savings. You have $0 invested. You are not in crisis. You are functional. Employed. And fine by every visible metric. But something has shifted in the last year that you can feel without being able to name. A low-grade awareness that the math is running somewhere in the background. And you are not participating in it. That somewhere. Quietly. Without drama or announcement. The gap between where you are and where you could have been is widening. You can feel the width of it. You cannot yet see the number. The reckoning number, age 30. You are at a family event at 30 when your uncle, a quiet man who has never once talked about money at any gathering you can remember, says something offhand about compound interest that stops you mid-sentence. Not because it's new information. Because of the way he says it. Like someone describing weather. Like a fact of nature so obvious it barely needs stating. You go home that night and you open a compound interest calculator for the first time. With the actual intention of finishing what you start. You type in the numbers. $300 a month. 22 years old start age. 10% average annual return. The historical average of the S&P 500. You set the end date to your current age. The calculator returns $52,000. You sit with that number. $52,000. Not a fortune. Not a life-changing sum in isolation. But you are 30 years old and you have $0 invested. And the difference between those two numbers is 8 years of $300 a month that you earned. And spent. And lived on. And the $52,000 is what was supposed to be quietly building in the background while all of that was happening. The $52,000 is the shadow version of your financial life. The one that was supposed to exist alongside the real one without requiring anything dramatic. Just $300. Just automated. Just left alone. You run it forward. $300 a month from today at 30. To 65. Same 10% average. The calculator returns $1,020,000. You run the original scenario forward. $300 a month from 22 to 65. The calculator returns $1,920,000. The difference is $900,000. $900,000. Not because you spent extravagantly. Not because you made bad investments. Because you waited 8 years. 8 years of $300 a month. $28,800 in total contributions. Produced a $900,000 difference at the end. This is what compound interest actually means. Not a concept. Not a motivational poster. A specific, clinical, irrefutable number that sits on a screen on a Sunday night and does not care how reasonable your reasons were. You close the calculator. You open it again. The number has not changed. The identity cost. Here is what the calculator cannot show you. The version of yourself at 45 who has $400,000 invested makes different decisions than the version who has $40,000. Not better decisions necessarily. Different ones. The version with $400,000 can leave a job that is making them miserable without catastrophe. Can take 6 months to figure out what they actually want. Can absorb an unexpected cost without restructuring their entire life around it. Can say no to things they would otherwise have to say yes to. Because the math demands it. The version with $40,000 cannot do those things. Not because they are less capable or less deserving. Because the floor beneath them is lower. And a lower floor changes everything about how you move through a room. How much risk you can afford. How much patience you can extend. How much of your life you get to choose. Versus how much gets chosen for you by the pressure of a thin margin. This is the identity cost. Not the $900,000. The options. The version of yourself in 15 years who has a different set of choices. Because a younger version of you made a single automated transfer on a Thursday payday. And then left it alone. That version of yourself is not rich. They are not retired at 40. Or driving something impressive. Or posting about financial freedom. They are simply someone whose life is slightly less constrained. Someone whose floor is slightly higher. Someone who has, quietly and without fanfare, been building something while they slept. That version of yourself was always available. The account was always there to open. The $300 was always somewhere in the budget if the budget had been looked at differently. The window was open for 8 years. And it is still technically open now. It is not too late. This is true and it is worth saying clearly. Because the alternative, deciding the gap is too large to close, is the most expensive decision you can make from here. The math from 30 is not the math from 22. But it is still math. It still compounds. It still builds the floor. It still creates the version of you at 55 who has options instead of obligations. The cost of starting late is real. It is $900,000 real. At the extreme end of the calculation. But the cost of not starting at all is the same calculation run further. The gap doesn't stop widening because you stopped looking at it. It widens whether you're watching or not. You know what the account number is. You've known for 8 months. You've been meaning to do something with it since the Sunday night you opened it. With every intention of following through. It is Sunday night again. The account is open. The transfer field is empty. Type the number. Not the perfect number. Not the number you'll start with once you've researched it fully and feel completely ready. Any number. The number that is true right now. In this budget. In this life. On this particular Sunday. Because the most expensive version of this story is the one where you close the tab again. And the account stays at 0. And next Sunday looks exactly like this one. The window is still open. It has been open this whole time. Go.